Say welcome. Welcome to our Tuesday tea time. It's so sweet and wonderful to have us here, and the welcoming of every age and ethnicity and cultural heritage and religious backgrounds, socioeconomic groups and various abilities and sexual orientation and our gender identity, that welcoming everyone and studying together and practicing for the benefit of all beings on this living earth, for which we take a few times out of the year to acknowledge a little more our attention to the earth, these solstices, and recognizing the suffering that's caused by biases and prejudices and systems of power and privilege, and the oppression that's based on race and sex and class and age, ethnicity, religion, national origin, ability, gender identity, sexual orientation. And we aspire to do no harm and to dismantle barriers that cause separation and suffering, and recognizing that our liberation is interconnected with the liberation of all. And so honoring each other for truly who we are, seeing each other as clearly as we can, setting aside our own views and opinions, and acknowledging the place where each of us is seated, the ancestral lands that you might be sitting on here in Multnomah County. We have the Clackamas and the Cowlitz and the tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Siletz, and just respectfully acknowledging the indigenous communities for the past, the present, and in the future, and being committed to remaining mindful of making ongoing efforts to recognize their knowledge and their creativity and their resilience, and acknowledging the policies of genocide and relocation and assimilation that still impact so many indigenous families today. So may all beings be recognized as inherently worthy, and may healing and reconciliation come to those who need it most, as we take this time in honoring the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, honoring those who have gone before us, who became realized, found freedom from suffering. And those words are said so, they're so short, becoming realized, finding freedom. And it's such a process. And we're so privileged to be able to be born in this human existence, to hear the teachings and let them become a part of our lives, and to have each other in this Sangha and so many Sanghas that went before us, so that we may hear the teachings and practice them directly for ourselves. And with that, I'm going to ring our bowl. And hopefully I have my correct sound on. Settling in our upright yet comfortable position. Noticing what's going on in the mind right now as we settle in place. We may take a quick overall view of noticing where there might be tensions, tightness. Noticing tensions that might be in the body. And letting that gentle note of whatever it feels like be a part of our practice. We may notice what's happening with our mind. Is there constriction, or are we open to spaciousness without having judgment about it? We have mindfulness present. Being present. Settling into a place of gravity with our buttocks on the chair. Noticing our feet on the floor or wherever there's pressure in the body. Grounding in gravity, we may notice warmth or coolness or tingling. Relaxing in this body, in this place and time. Holding ourselves in kindness. Whatever that might feel like to you. What does that feel like? Kindness and well-being. I'm sure we can conjure up times when we've been kind to others recently, or another person has been kind to us. There might have been a little fluttering or softening in the heart. Let us see if we can touch upon that feeling now. Sometimes in the suttas there's a phrase, happy comfort of body and mind. Well, that might be an ideal for us, but may we hold that image of having happy comfort of body and mind. May we have comfort in this body and mind. May there be kindness. May we have compassion for ourselves and for others when things are challenging. Let us have that as a base for our touching into gravity and holding our bodies here in this moment in time. The spaciousness of the breath in this container of the body, where we can feel it at the nostrils. And we may notice some sensations of warmth or coolness. Pressure, lightness. Or we may notice the sensations that happen at the diaphragm, the rising and falling of the diaphragm as the breath breathes us. Noticing where awareness lands, where is our attention drawn. If we want to lay a foundation of some concentration, we can return to the breath. Repeatedly, as we find ourselves wandering, we can come back to that single object of the breath. At the nostrils, or at the diaphragm, or we can choose a point that's touching of pressure. That can always remind us to come back to the present moment if we notice our buttocks on the cushion, or where our hands are touching, or our arms are lying. Or where our lips are touching. Listening to the silence. Or maybe sometimes it's not so silent. We might have conversations going on in our head with different parts of ourselves, from the part that's giving us a Dharma lecture on how we'd better pay attention again, or Maybe there's thoughts of the future and the past that go rolling along, and that's what the thoughts do. They just go rolling along. Endless phenomenon rolling along. We can notice them as thoughts or thinking is happening, that sense door of the mind. We may also notice the other senses if our attention is broader than the single object. We may notice hearing from far away, or another part of the building that we're sitting in, or another part of the room that we're in. We may notice tasting, something coming to the taste sensation, touching. Each of these senses is the place that we receive all of our information. It arises due to conditions. Conditions come together. We hear, we see, we touch, we taste, we smell. We have thoughts that arise and pass away. And viewing this with mindfulness and awareness, we can have a kind of equanimity, or we can notice when equanimity is not present. As whatever arises due to conditions is seen clearly with mindfulness. We stay with it carefully, and we see that it passes on its own accord at some point. And if we try to grasp to something that's pleasant, or push away something that's unpleasant, we find ourselves disgruntled and unhappy, and we might see more subtly that we cause ourselves suffering this way. And we can be present with that and see its basic nature of being impermanent, unable to be held on to, consequently non-personal. It's not about me, mine. Conditions arise, they stay for a certain amount of time, they pass away, they fall apart. We are in this awareness, holding the senses in this large open spaciousness, being present in this spaciousness. To see with mindfulness and insight bringing wisdom clearly what is being known. As we talked about last week, we start with mindfulness of the breath, and we have mindfulness of the body. We also have mindfulness of feelings. I'll go into it more later in today's conversation, but the general instruction is feelings of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, or we don't really know. It's confusing, or we don't see clearly. Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So we may notice after we sit for a while, sensations may arise somewhere in the body. We could give them soft, gentle notes of whatever the sensation is. Or we could notice it as simply pleasant or unpleasant. We can say the same thing about thoughts that arise. Some may be pleasant, some may be unpleasant. Some may not be so clear, they're neutral or unrecognized. These are the first two parts of the four foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the breath and the body, and mindfulness of feelings. So as we're present with what arises, or if we return to the breath, we can add the gentle note of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral when something appears. And we may notice if we're grasping on it, holding on to it with some kind of greed if it's pleasant, or some kind of aversion if it's unpleasant. Or if we can't tell at all, it's just a kind of delusion. Those three characteristics of anicca, anatta, and dukkha are not always known. So we investigate what arises, and wisdom is present so that we can let go of something that might be harmful to us. We can incline toward that gentleness and just be present in this spacious silence for what arises. Sometimes we might notice the mind wandering or just our attention drifting. We're not really aware of anything happening. We've sort of fallen into that kind of delusion. We can just wake up right there at that moment whenever we become more conscious again and realize that that's a moment of awakening. That's one of those split seconds of freedom. We've awakened to the present moment. Without judgment or shame about it, we just continue from there, or return to the breath, or return to the open spaciousness of this body, this container of the breath. Or we have sounds nearby. Those will definitely make us more alert. And so as we continue in this practice, there's lots of places the mind can go that helps us incline toward more skillful. There's lots of places the mind goes that might be more unskillful. But we just sit in the present moment. Having that be all right, wherever we wake up finding ourselves present. If we return to the breath, noticing if it's long or short, or deep or shallow, warm or cool, it gives us some focus on minute details of attending to this present moment. And it also shows us the true nature of each moment, arising and passing. It's not controllable. Or if there's sensation in the body that's speaking to us after a while we're sitting as still as we can, we can notice that too, pleasant or unpleasant. But these inclining our hearts and minds toward the skillful, toward the wholesome, only needs to be a little 5% of our awareness to bring us back on track or keep us on track. We have this intention of being kind and compassionate toward ourselves, of staying alert with enough effort to be interested in what's happening in the present moment. We have mindfulness occurring. So we have wisdom and concentration present. If we're using the notes of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, we might also notice, as the Buddha talks about, that there's a difference between what's considered worldly feelings and unworldly feelings, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But at first we seem to think that our feelings are something to hang on to, and we don't really realize that they're impersonal phenomena. They come and go due to conditions that trigger them. And so we can notice something being pleasant, and seconds later something else might be unpleasant. Conditions have arisen. And when we begin to understand the different kinds of feelings and the way they function, we can prevent some of the conditions that lead to painful and confused mental states by relaxing and altering our attitudes. This can allow the mind to stay more pleasant and clear. It's another one of those exercises in letting go, what the practice is all about. Letting go of greed and aversion. Digging up those roots of our suffering. Noticing when something's pleasant or unpleasant, or we can't really quite tell, but we're looking. And yet our attachment to wanting it to be held onto or pushed away creates that kind of discomfort. And so we see that and let go. Become a little more detached and less reactive to whatever feelings might arise. This is the Buddha's invitation to come and see. That we can stop blaming other people and external events for our sorrows, and we can begin to look inside, where we really have the power to change things, to see clearly. Waking up again in this moment, noticing again what is the quality of our minds. What are we noticing in the body? What is happening with the breath? It's probably different now than when we first began. Reminding ourselves that we are here with an intention to be awake and aware, to see clearly ways that we create suffering for ourselves. And we can do this with kindness. We can hold ourselves gently. And sometimes when it's not so easy to hold ourselves gently, we can always find another person, a friend, a teacher, benefactor, an animal, a child. Taking this time now to allow kindness to include another being. Including them in our thoughts of kindness, including them in our body of breath. An unconditional kindness without grasping, envisioning this person healthy, happy, free from suffering, and finding happiness in the causes of happiness. And letting this sensed feeling of kindness also include another friend. Seeing this person happy and healthy. Wishing them goodwill, wishing them to be kind to themselves, letting this friend be included in our hearts of goodwill, of metta. And expanding this sense within our hearts to include someone that we don't know. Letting this person into our heart, knowing just as I wish to be happy, so does this person wish to be happy. May you be safe and protected. May you have ease. When difficulty arises, may you hold yourself in compassion as I hold you in compassion. And allowing this built up concentration and kindness flow to other beings that we don't know. Maybe our neighbors or our neighborhood. Letting thoughts of kindness, well-wishing, and compassion flow to different directions from where we're located. To the east and to the south, to the west and to the north. As the Buddha gave it in the Metta Sutta, above and below and all around. May all beings be safe and protected. May they be free from anxiety. May they be free from ill will. May they know happiness and the causes of happiness. And may this goodness that arises in our practice, may we remember that it is of benefit to all sentient beings, those seen and unseen, known and unknown, in happiness and in sorrow, in joy and sadness, even in confusion. May all beings everywhere be safe and protected, free from harm. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitava meruchanti te samvapasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence, arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. thank you for your practice. May it bring you joy and others as you act in your Buddha nature.